Hey, it's Dave here, and in this video, we're just going to continue our series on lab testing, particularly stool testing, and kind of figure out and explain why you need to take matters into your own hands, but also why you may not want to run a stool test privately, and you might still think that the medical system has all the tools that you need. I want to just give an argument that just counters that a little bit. And so one of the reasons people don't run stool tests or any form of private or functional lab testing a lot of the time is because there's a deep entrenched or ingrained, programmed, if you like, belief that the doctor will sort me out. The doctor knows everything. The medical system is set up to resolve every single problem that I could ever have. And let's face it, the medical system is absolutely fantastic. I've had members of my family receive emergency care from the medical system, and it's saved their lives. And so I'm not against the medical system in any way. I don't want to be one of these obnoxious nutritional or alternative healthcare practitioners who knocks and criticizes the medical system. What I would like to do, though, is point out some of the shortcomings. And it's not a criticism necessarily, because the medical system is set up in a certain way to deal with a population. So in the UK at the moment, England, Wales, Scotland, etc., we've got about 65 million people. So the medical system is set up to help 65 million people from all different types of backgrounds and socioeconomic status and what have you. In the USA, I think the population's about 330 to 340 million. At the moment, something like that, so it's about 5 times the size of the UK, and that's an even bigger headache. So you've got to think about, if you were the head honcho in the medical system, what would you do to try and look after 65 million people or 100 million people or 300 million people? It's very, very difficult. And so the system is set up to help on a general basis. A lot of it is emergency focused. You have to be really unwell, and then you go up the priority list in terms of treatment. If you just have a few day-to-day symptoms, functional digestive disorders, for example, like irritable bowel syndrome, functional heartburn, functional bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and things like that, there's not really that much focus in the medical system to deal with that, because it's not deemed to be of high importance compared to somebody being hit by a bus and needing emergency attention, or somebody who's already developed cancer who needs an operation, all of those different kinds of things that are more serious, right? So it's not individualized, and it is population based. So that's one of the biggest things I wanted to share there, in the idea that the doctor's going to sort you out, because the doctor's set up within this system. Now, next thing is that there are budgetary constraints. So where I live in the UK, we have this wonderful thing, the NHS, the National Health Service, and it's bloody phenomenal. But there are budgetary constraints. And so if you just have a few symptoms that are maybe knocking you down the vitality scale from, rather than being a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of how well you feel, you're down at a 6 out of 10. You don't feel great, it's really affecting your life, but you don't have a disease, they're not going to spend a bunch of money on lots of testing to try and find out what is wrong with you, because it's just not in the system, or not a high priority in the system, right? So this is a major problem as well. People just expect and feel entitled to going to the doctor and getting tested for anything, while without taking responsibility to look after themselves. And so there has to be some way of meeting in the middle. We as patients, as individuals in society, have to take responsibility for our own actions in terms of our health. And we want to meet the medical system in the middle. Don't expect the medical system to do everything for us while we just go off and live a life of hedonism and drink lots and eat the wrong foods and stress ourselves out and then expect to be healthy. Okay, so all of that aside, and being more specific to the stool testing that we're talking about here. In the medical system, the way that they test the stool, the way that they analyze it, is a little bit outdated now. And so I've mentioned in previous videos that there's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong in the digestive system. And if you're kind of looking at it from a percentage perspective, the medical system probably only looks for about 10 or 20% of the things that could go wrong. When I say things that could go wrong, I'm talking about the function of the digestive system. I'm not talking about diagnosing a disease. So I'm not talking about colonoscopy trying to find cancer and ulcerative colitis. I'm not talking about an endoscopy or a gastroscopy to try and find ulcers, or a scan to try and find gallstones and things like that. What I'm thinking about here is what can we find out in terms of the digestive system that is causing it to function in a suboptimal way. And these are things like low levels of friendly bacteria, low levels of stomach acid, low levels of digestive enzymes, parasites that are there chronically and not from something like a food poisoning, yeast and fungal overgrowth, and what have you. These are things that are not really considered in the mainstream medical model in most cases, right? But this is what the home stool testing does when you use the private labs. It tests for a much wider spectrum of potential underlying causes for your digestive symptoms. So it's really important to understand that, and there's going to be a video in this series on the difference between what they look at in the medical system when they do a stool test and what you would look at if you used one of the private labs. Now, I'm very biased, of course, towards using the private labs because it means you're not stuck in a waiting list. You're actually working with a lab that understands what they really need to be looking for. And then you're working with practitioners who actually know how to fix that problem quickly or fix whatever is found out of balance in the test itself. And so I think we've got to get out of this idea that the doctor's going to sort us out, right? If we've been unwell for months or years and we've seen 2 or 3 doctors and they're not really helping, we have to take a stand at some point and say, I'm going to take charge of this situation and figure it out for myself, right? So the doctor is not always going to sort it out. You're going to have amazing medical care if you do have a genuine medical problem. They're going to be able to do things that people like me cannot do for you. But in the most part, if you have a few chronic symptoms in the digestive system and you're feeling tired and moody and things like that, then you need to do the private stuff to figure out what's going on. So in the next video, we're going to talk about kind of a continuation here from this topic, which is why would you trust the private labs and why would you trust people like me when you can go and see a doctor who spent 5 years at medical school and supposedly knows what he or she should be doing, whereas people like us haven't gone through medical school. It's really important to get that trust, and so that's going to be the focus of the next video. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope it's been helpful, and I will catch you very soon. Thank you.